Assalamualaikum students and teachers. In today's video, I will focus on the topic of derivation of demand curves, and this is related to consumer equilibrium topic, which is a very important topic for paper 4 A-level economics. We'll be doing two diagrams simultaneously. In the upper panel that I'll draw initially will show budget line, indifference curve, and consumer equilibrium. And the lower panel, which I'll draw later, I'll show a simple demand curve. So in the upper panel, along x-axis we show good x, and along y-axis we show good y. Initial budget line is a straight line. As you know, budget line is a straight line, and we can label it B1. Initial indifference curve is IC1, and the new initial equilibrium is at this point where quantity x1 of good x is being purchased. Due to the decrease in the price of good x, budget line shifts to B2. Now this will have an impact on the demand for good x, but there will be the price effect. In order to show price effect into substitution and income effect separately, I draw a hypothetical line. That hypothetical line, the purpose of that line is to separate price effect into two components, divide price effect into two components, income effect and substitution effect. That hypothetical line must be parallel to the new budget line and tangent to the older indifference curve. So this black line is doing that job for us. And this takes the equilibrium from this point to this one, and quantity demanded of x rises from x1 to x2. Now this is substitution effect only. This is the only substitution effect, as at both these points, real income is constant as utility obtained by the consumer is the similar as both these points are on the same indifference curve. So utility and income is the same. Only change in these 2 points is the relative price of x is lower at this point and quantity demanded for x is more. Now there is substitution effect. Substitution effect is similar for all types of goods. Income effect is different for different types of goods. If x is a normal good, the equilibrium will be to the right of x2 somewhere here. So we can say that xn would be the demand for normal goods if the good is normal. In this case, both substitution effect and income effect have reinforced each other, and they have led to increase in the demand for good x. For essential goods, income effect is 0, and equilibrium would be exactly where x2 quantity demanded was consumed. It is because the change in income has not changed demand for the essential good. And income effect is 0, and only change in demand is because of the change in demand due to the substitution effect. If the good is inferior, the equilibrium will be somewhere at point I, which is to the left of x2. In this case, substitution effect is raising the demand from x1 to x2, as it is the case for every type of good. But income effect is negative, and higher income results in low demand for good x, and demand for good x goes down. And in the case of different good, income effect is not only negative, it is stronger than the substitution effect, and the equilibrium will be to the left of x1, which will mean the demand for x will actually fall when the price of good x falls. It is because the income effect is not only negative, it is stronger than the substitution effect. Now, how do we use these 4 points to draw a diagram? For that, we show a demand and supply diagram. This is quantity of good x. As well, you can see that price of good x on y-axis, initial price of good x was px1, and initial quantity was x1 as shown in the upper panel. Because of the fall in price of good x, px went down to px2, and that has caused a shift in the budget line from b1 to b2. In case of a normal good, the demand comes to point N. In case of essential goods, demand comes to essential E point. In case of inferior, demand comes to point I. And in case of given, demand comes to point G. Now, if we join these 2 points together, we can say for normal goods, demand curve for normal goods is downward sloping and a flat one. Demand curve for essential goods is steeper compared to the demand curve for normal goods. Demand curve for inferior goods is even more steep, whereas the demand curve for given goods is upward rising. So if you look at these 4 diagrams, there is a larger change in the demand for good x, as good x is normal good, and for this good, both substitution effect and income effect have led to increase in demand of the product. For essential goods, demand curve is steeper. It is because the substitution effect has raised the demand, but income effect has not changed the demand. So relative change in demand for essential goods is smaller compared to the change in the demand for normal good. On the other hand, the demand curve for inferior goods is even more steep. It is because substitution effect has led to increase in demand for good X. Income effect has decreased it. And that is why the impact on demand for good X is quite low. Though demand has gone up, the increase in demand is relatively smaller compared to the change in demand in the case of essential or normal goods. So demand curve is even more steep. For given goods, the demand curve is upward rising because income effect has outweighed substitution effect. Substitution effect led to higher demand, but income effect, negative income effect, not only decreased the demand, it also outweighed the increase in demand of good X because of substitution effect, and this resulted in an upward rising demand curve. So for this diagram, you can show the derivation of demand curve for different types of goods, and you can also compare the elasticity of demand, and you can also tell that demand for curve for normal goods is more price elastic compared to the demand curve for essential goods, and demand curve for essential goods is more price elastic or more flat compared to the demand curve for inferior goods. I hope you like this video.